good thing somewhere. Okay? Picture the same story, the same supermarket, and you've been followed around that supermarket by 4 feral children who've been climbing on shelves. You get into the queue, the kids are in front of you, climbing all over the trolley of a woman that they call Mum. And in her trolley, she has pre-processed foods, she has chips and cordials, there's no fruit, there's no veg, there's nothing that looks like, nothing that you could make a meal from, lots of things to heat up. What's the story that you're telling yourself about those children? I'm thinking, no wonder those kids are like that. The only good thing is I have the sense to not say the words out loud. I realise that actually that story forms a really important judgment that I make about who that woman is and who the people are in her life, how she operates as a mother. And where does that story come from? That story comes from me having a Scottish mother who made practically everything that we ate except for the bread, who made us all sit down and eat together, who told us about the importance of learning to cook, feeding your family well, looking after them, working hard for them, giving them good food. That stuff is played for me over and over and over in my mind. I can't get rid of it, no matter how I try. I hear her voice. What are you making for Sunday dinner? Surely not that rubbish. I can't. She's part of a story that's in my head. Here's a chance for you to make up a story. Here's a picture. Tell me a story about that picture. You don't know who these people are. You've never met them before in your life, but you walk past them in the street. Who are they? Who are they in relation to each other? What's going on in the picture? Have a go.
Father and son.
Father and son? Tell me why you think they might be a father and son.
Hair colour. The taller man is leaning on the wheelchair. It looks as if he cares.
Okay, right. So it looks as if he cares, that, and there's some clues, there's some visual clues, because you've seen grey-haired older men with dark-haired younger men, and you've thought that's what the relationship might be. You've maybe experienced it in your own life. You've got a story that you can sort of fill out some of the details of. Any other guesses at what the story might be? Where do they live? Where do they come from? Yeah?
They're both veterans.
We're both veterans, really? Yeah?
The one on the left is Afghanistan, the one on the right is Vietnam.
Right, okay. Thank you.
And the one on the left is struggling to cope with what the one on the right already knows how to cope with.
Okay, thank you. That's a great story. And it's a story that's half right, actually. It's very interesting. Let me just tell you about this picture. The picture is it's a photograph of my husband, who's here, Richard, and his support worker, Paul. Paul, it happens to be the veteran, and indeed a veteran of Vietnam. Paul and Richard have worked together for 12 years. Richard has a condition called spinal muscular atrophy, which means that he has only a tiny bit of movement in one of his hands. And so Paul effectively provides Richard's hands and feet for him. And lots of people, when I show this story in training, when I'm doing work with people with disabilities or people who work with folks with disabilities, people will tell me that this is a story about, a carer and somebody that they support. And they're quite often telling me that they're going back home to the care home where Richard lives. What they have is a really small story. Because what their story doesn't take into account, and it's never happened in all of the times that I've shown this picture, no one has ever said that Richard might be a person who has his own home, runs his own business, has a wife, is a councillor for the city of Melville, is a widely respected volunteer and advocate for people with disabilities in the area where we live. They have a really small story, right? The story is this size, when in fact the story of Richard's life is enormous. And what they don't know about are the ways in which Richard supports Paul. Because Paul has his own struggles, Paul has his own tensions, and Richard is as much of a support to him as he is to Richard. But you probably wouldn't know that until you got to know them a bit better. We don't have lots of stories of people with disabilities living that kind of life in the world that we live in. Now, a small story would be okay, but what happens to our stories is that they quite often don't just stay in our head or in our hearts. They become our practice, they become the things that we do, they become the policy of our government, they become the decisions that we make around finance and opportunity.